idea with this hike was for us to do about 100 kilometers across the long-range mountains. As you can see on this GPS track, we did about 17 kilometers. I think my GPS is a little bit less than that, but yeah, you'll see by the end of the video what ended up happening. We had a couple of gear failures because of the wind and had to spin around. Somebody got a small rig in here, look. Yeah, it's a little hard to avoid the wet patches in here too, in my experience. The next few shots you can see just how open it is going across the long-range mountains up at the top. In a lot of places at the top of the long-range mountains it's very flat. This is a part of the Appalachian Range, and so just like a lot of the Appalachians, this is a very old mountain system, and over the millennia it's become real flat. So we tried to capture that in some of these videos as we kind of went across the top. I don't know if you guys can see, but there's two moose down there approaching that pond. They saw us and they ran. this was our home for the night. I'm sure you can hear the wind in the background. It was a very windy location. You'll see in a minute why we eventually had to head back. So you might have noticed that I mentioned that it was a bit windy. You might have noticed from the racket in some of those videos that it's a bit windy. And so, yeah, it was really windy up on top of the long range mountains. The gusts were, at least 60 kilometers an hour. And, excuse me, when we were up there trying to figure out where we were going to set up camp, that was one of the considerations for us, that we needed to kind of find something that was somewhat sheltered. And we're above the tree line there, so that's a little bit of a problem. So what we did was we looked at our maps and our GPS and all of that stuff, and we decided that the place that we would set up in a valley just up ahead of us might be sheltered enough because it was, lower ground. It turned out not to be the case. What ended up happening was that the wind changed direction, and it was basically a wind tunnel that we were set up in. It didn't change direction until a bit later that night, but by that time we had our tent set up. We knew it was going to be windy, so we had, kind of large rocks placed up on our tent pegs, and that kind of worked. But both myself and Randy, one of the guys who we hiked with, experienced the wind so strong that it actually threw the rock right off of a tent peg and ripped a tent peg clean out. For me, that wasn't a drastic issue because the tent peg was still there, but Randy lost 2 tent pegs like that. And believe me, these rocks were, large enough that we could barely lift them up from the pond. So it was an impressive strength of wind. The other issue was that both Randy and I got damage to our tents because of the wind. You could see that the wind was really blowing at my tent, and his tent was damaged well beyond the point of fixing things up and dealing with it. He kind of had to take emergency measures just to get it shelter for the night. So, given that the forecast was calling for worse weather the next day, it was going to stay windy and it was also going to rain. So we decided that the safest thing to do, with gear failures being an issue, was to turn around and head back out. So it was a little disappointing to not finish the hike that we had planned, but at the same time, you always have to be thinking about safety, and neither one of us wanted to press that SOS button and get airlifted out, from the middle of nowhere. Every day that we went on, it would have gotten a little bit riskier. So rather than risk anything, we decided to spin around and, we headed back out and did basically the same hike out. I don't have any video from the hike out because of the rain. It didn't amount to much, but I decided to keep my camera dry and keep it in my pack. The route back was pretty much the same as the route out anyway. We skipped a couple kilometers of looping around some of those lakes to get viewpoints. So we just kind of cut straight across when we got to the top and cut off a couple of kilometers. But anyway, it was a really fun hike. We saw lots of wildlife. I love being up on the top of the long range mountains and trying to find routes. So it was a fun experience. And despite the fact that we didn't do everything that we wanted to do, we had a good time. So that's what it's all about. It was a learning experience, which I think is the key thing. A lot of times when you go out and you have these issues, the real trick is learning from your mistakes and kind of putting it all together on your next hike. So I think that's what's going to happen there. But anyway, it was fun.